Hi guys. This is going to be a series of videos to walk you through different art processes you can do, you can include in your artist trading cards. I've got my paper set up here. These are not the 2.5 by 3.5, I guess, correct dimensions for artist trading cards. Remember, if you want to participate in an actual trade of artist trading cards, they usually require that they are that specific dimension. However, for this project, just sort of to avoid waste and give us more surface area to work on, I divide my paper into 8 equal rectangles. The first process I'm going to show you is a simple salt effect. It's where you watercolor on the section and then put some salt on it, basically. The salt does the same thing as if you put it on ice on a sidewalk. It sort of absorbs the water a little bit and gives you sort of this crystal or starry looking effect. These are all techniques that you don't have to use for layer 1, but they do work good for sort of a background. I like to encourage a lot of layering in my artist trading cards since there's so many different processes you can include. I think it just makes them look very diverse and interesting. So we get started with the first process. Paint the background here. Since we said it sort of results in a starry effect, I might sort of use blues and purples here. And really just sort of cover my background. And while the paint is still wet, which this is, I'm simply going to sprinkle some salt on it, and you should be able to see the effect immediately. The longer you keep the salt on, will affect sort of the appearance or the effect that you get. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there, let it do some more to the surface there, and move on to my next one. The next one is sort of the same idea, only this time I'm using a little bit of diluted dish soap. Soap does what soap does and begins to sort of clean the surface. You could do it in a controlled manner or a random sort of splatter. I'm going to use a little bit of green and maybe some yellow. Sort of paint this bit of a gradient background maybe. I may add a little bit of blue in here too, just so that there's a high enough contrast that you can see the effect taking place fairly well. Okay, I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue there. And the color is just obviously up to you. Alright, so I can just sort of make little controlled drips, and you can see it sort of spreads out, makes a starry effect. The more the paint is allowed to dry, the smaller the circle will expand. So since this is very wet, since I just painted it, the circle expanded quite a bit. If I let it dry for a little bit more, it would have less sort of radial effect. A little small drop here, or at least try to. There we go. Alright, so that is another option for a background. The third one is sort of called credit card painting. This is just my old staff ID really. But you can kind of paint with the edge of a card. It's sort of like when you use a knife, painting knife in oil painting, which you can kind of spread it on. It just sort of has a different effect that way. Okay, just a different way to apply the paint. You don't want to overdo it because paint will start to mix, and you really just sort of want to leave, I guess it's up to you, but I sort of like to leave the streaks that the card creates. That's a quick third option. We also have a resist. This is a pretty basic sort of effect, but wax and water do not mix, so anything that you put down with wax, which is crayon, or oil, so you could use oil pastel, will resist the watercolor. So you could make a resist background. You could draw a picture, you could make a pattern. I think for this, just for the sake of time here, I'm going to create just a simple pattern. Sort of these diamonds here. Polka dots. All right. Since I use pretty bright colors, those are almost sort of neon, I'm actually going to use a pretty dark paint. I'm going to use some black here and paint over top of that. And you can see wherever the lines are, the paint obviously does not affect that part of the surface. So you can do a resist for your background layer. I'm actually going to do that just a bit darker. You may choose to sort of dab this with a tissue to get this off of your wax marks there, especially down in this area, but that's up to you depending on the effect that you want. The next one is, I just call this a drip painting application. It's where you will paint the paper with water first. I'm going to get some clean water because that has some of the black paint that I just used in it. Just wet the surface first, so this is just my paintbrush with water, nothing else on it. And then in these droppers I just have some diluted tempera paint, so I just sort of mixed it with water. It's water based anyway, so you'll be able to see it'll mix really well, really easy. And you just sort of drip it on. Allow the colors to sort of mix. You can overlap. I just chose to do the primaries, but you could mix whatever colors that you wanted to, really. All right, so that's another option. The next one here is called a plastic wrap peel. It's basically painting. I'm going to also use the same colors, the tempera paint that I used to do my credit card scraping. This time I'm just going to paint it on, and then what we're going to do, I'm going to sort of mix to get a sort of a purple here. What we're going to do is, while the paint is still wet, we will put this plastic wrap. This is just saran wrap, plastic wrap. Press it onto the surface and sort of crinkle it around with our hands. You can kind of control it, but it is a little bit random. But wherever the air sort of gets trapped under and you have this sort of textural look on the plastic wrap, I'm just going to leave that here for a little while. When we peel it off, all those little cracks and diagonal lines, the texture that the saran wrap makes, will be sort of imprinted into our paint there. So that one will wait a little bit to see what it looks like. Our salt effect here is looking really good. That's pretty cool. The next one, we are going to do marker painting. And really that sounds just like what it is. You are going to use just water on your brush. I'm going to use a smaller brush. And you'll be able to paint in the sections, whatever you draw with marker, you'll be able to paint that in. I'm going to get in some more clean water. So for this one, I'll just make some sort of basic sort of shape designs. But I just do one shape at a time, then dip my brush in just water. You can sort of spread the color from the marker into the shape. So you can see how that sort of spreads. It really just makes a sort of a watercolor effect, but it's a little more controlled. So just a different kind of interesting way to go about adding a color. The reason I just do one shape at a time is if you allow the water or the marker to set into the paper, then the color won't spread as nicely. You can blend colors this way. Sort of blend and mix. Adding a few colors. You'll still be able to see hints of the lines that I put in here, but they do sort of get distorted, mixed a little bit. So that's another option. I'm not going to finish that section. I think you guys get the point there. And then the last one is collage. So I'm not going to really cut a lot of things and glue them down. I'm just going to give you some options. Really, I just like to have on hand a lot of diverse options. So newsprint, wallpaper, construction paper, old sheets of music, tissue paper. The more variety you have, the more options you have creatively, I guess. Magazine clippings, things like that. I will, however, show you a few examples of finished ones so that you can see how these can be used in a final project.